8 years ago, this all started in a library with some cookies. And the best we had was some coffee and some cookies, and 80 billion candidates, because no, we never had one of these before. And so we had to have about 9 people the first year. It has grown to what it is now, and each year it gets better and bigger and bigger. This is going into the Hall of Fame, and this is the gravel from Donald Blydenberg, who last year, one day from today, was put into the Hall of Fame, but he died a month or so ago, and this is the history of him as a judge. And we'll put it in, there is a showcase that items are put in. Everyone that got inducted was told, bring an object. Some people didn't, but that's okay. We have 5 Hall of Fame. Always had the Athletic Hall of Fame. And then along the way, we decided that we'll have the Science Hall of Fame, the Music Hall of Fame, Arts and Letters Hall of Fame. And what did we discover? Everybody had to go to college in order to get in the Hall of Fame. So we developed an Entrepreneur Hall of Fame. And a lot of people in this town didn't go to college, stayed at businesses for 40, 50 years, donated a lot of money to the school, and we're the backbone. So the entrepreneur has anybody. You could be the owner of General Motors, and you were in there with the guy that owned the delicatessen for 30 years. That's good for them. We have in the museum, we have a wall that's dedicated to the Marines. And if anybody here from Kings Park is a Marine and has the picture, I'd like it for that wall. Normally, we have some Eaton's Neck people here because we adopted Eaton's Neck, meaning the museum, and I claim the school did. And we do activities with them, and they're going to have a volleyball tournament here, and they're going to have a basketball tournament here, because they're people away from home. There are vets, and the only vets that we have in the area. I appreciate it, and as I said to him, I owe him. All right, now, I could say Mrs. Szymanski, because Mrs. Szymanski is president of the Coast Guard Parents Group, but we don't need her right now. David Flynn now comes up, because David's stuck to be with, he's got a hurt shoulder. He too was not told that he was going to do anything, but he's second in command of the museum. He's the town planner, and he's a landscape man, and he has a wife that makes very, very good exhibits. Very good. You should see the ones she makes at the museum. All right, we have, we'll save it for last. First person up is Frank Mercury, and his daughter will speak for him.
I asked him if he remembered me because he was my humanities teacher, and he said, "You guys change your hair and everything. I can't remember everything."
He comes up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the most vivid memories as a small child that I had was watching my dad set up the home movie theater screen and projector in preparation for our frequent home movie viewings. He would turn off all the lights, and excitement would swell up in me as the smell of the projector and its low hum would give way to a misty vapor that would emanate throughout the room, adding a sense of mystique and wonder. As the youngest child in not only my immediate family, but also in my father's rather large extended family, I learned a great deal about my family and its heritage from these home movie sessions. He and my mom had moved from Queens to Kings Park back in 1965, when Lordly Court right over here sat mostly on a potato farm, and the huge oaks that surround our block now were just saplings. And I know this because of the pictures that he took. All of my relatives who would frequent from the city, and the night would not be complete until the movies were running and the photo albums were passed around. This is how I learned about my family and the members that I never had the pleasure of meeting. All of them laughing and carrying on, and my older siblings and cousins as babies and small children children, celebrating countless occasions and milestones, all in silence and in black and white. It was magical. The only sound was everybody telling their version of how they remembered that occasion or event, and someone yelling in the background, "Oh, see, there's Frank, there he is, there's Frankie." Being the youngest, I was used to being absent from many of these early pictures and practically all of the silent movies, but I always wondered and asked often, "Where's Daddy?" And the answer was always the same: Daddy was taking the pictures. In the same way that I learned about my family through my father's pictures and movies, I also learned about the history of our nation and the beauty that surrounds it. He had taken my mom on a scenery-indulgent trip for their honeymoon to the Grand Canyon. I was able to appreciate the panoramic beauty of the West without even laying eyes on it. I also saw the cloisters, the Empire State Building, all of the monuments in Washington, D.C., Mount Rushmore, the Alamo, famous lighthouses of Maine, and countless others in their preserved state of years before my time. By looking at all of his beautiful photographs and the ones that he developed himself. I vaguely remember his darkroom that he so gallantly gave up to accommodate my oldest sister on her quest to have her own room. Those of you who know my father know he has a lust for travel and scenery and all things historical. By the time I graduated high school from Kings Park, I could proudly say that I had been to almost 3/4 of this nation and able to see these icons in person with new pictures taken by my dad with new technology. Not only did it serve to make us a closer family and taught us many lessons about life and exposed us to many of the experiences and surroundings and the diverse beauty of it. As we progressed through our school years, Dad was always there with the camera in hand, and I will never forget the first video camera he had documenting every moment. The camera itself probably weighed about 15 pounds, with another 20 pounds of video recorder and battery pack strapped around him like a heavy satchel. These were how the first home video cameras were, and it did not bother him one bit. Eventually, the cameras got smaller and the videos got longer, and when the computers came into the mix, there was no stopping Dad what he could do with a camera, a lens, music, and editing. Well, I started on this on a very personal note. I would like to shift a bit towards the recognition of my father, Frank McCurry's contribution to our community as a pictorial and literary historian and advocate. Always being very civic-minded, Dad was constantly involved in bettering the community and the education of students in the Kings Park School District. His efforts at organized town meetings and editorials in many local publications had assisted in creating great change for the better in policies, public safety, education, and even safer traffic patterns for pedestrians and drivers alike. He headed up charitable organizations such as St. Vincent de Paul for many years, has been a lector and usher in St. Joseph's Church, has held the position of Grand Knight in the Knights of Columbus, and continues to be active in many civic organizations, including the Nisququoit River State Park Association and the Kings Park Civic Association. Recently, Dad started a community photography club, which was successfully launched with a solid group of photography enthusiasts. Throughout all of his endeavors, Dad has been asked periodically about his interest in pursuing some further civic positions. However, his joy has not only been persevering towards the betterment of the community, but documenting the heart and soul of what has made Kings Park such a unique and special place to live. He has attended countless community events and captured the expression of honored guests, winning teams, heartfelt memorials, celebratory parades, and historic commemorations. In between his community involvement, he takes quiet trips to all of the surrounding parks, photographing flowers, birds, butterflies, and bees, water, and all the beauty of nature. Many of these beautiful pieces of art have been exhibited in local parks such as Caleb Smith, Nisququoit State Park, and others. The Kings Park Heritage Museum continues to be a recipient of all of the wonderful memories of Kings Park he has captured throughout the years. Ever since I can remember, my father's life has been one of pictures. An avid photographer from way before my generation, his art hangs proudly in countless homes and museums, depicting scenes as quiet as a butterfly sucking the nectar from a flower to the excitement of the latest graduating class boldly throwing their caps in the air. Regardless of the subject matter, each picture, video, editorial tells a story not of just one life, but the life of a town and a community that Frank McCurry proudly calls home for the past 49 years. Congratulations, Daddy, and thank you for a lifetime of memories.
And I was also a civilian employee of the United States Air Force for about 7 years as a technical data specialist. And the thing that I always want to do the most, naturally, is photography. You do that in all the tech manuals and any repair manuals that the military has. They had to be of a certain quality in a certain way. And that was my job. And I did that for about 26 years, going to most of the companies on Long Island who was doing work for the military. I can't say much more as to what my experience is as far as photography is concerned, as Chris said at all. But I am a pain in the butt when it comes to civics. And I get involved in quite a bit of that. Miles knows it, some of the other people knows it. Okay, so that I'm there with the Kings Park Civic Association, the Mystic Park River State Park, with the American Legion. So I'm around town, and you'll never know, I might be right behind you. So anyway, without any further ado, I want to thank the Heritage Museum, Leo Ostwald, Board of Education, Dr. Egan, and the whole group who made this thing a success and to put me in the honor roll, which I find to be an honor. Thank you.
Next picture is Madeline Gallo. Speaking for her or about her is her sister, my neighbor, Larry Flynn's wife. I forgot.
Hello? Can you hear?
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. I want to let you know how excited and proud I am to have this opportunity to speak about my sister Madeline and her achievements as a sculptor and a woman. And as I look around here, she's surrounded by former classmates from 1962 and her family, and she has this great support of everyone. And the most important person that is here is her son Nicholas, who was very lucky. He was in New York City on a business trip, and he was able to make it tonight. Unfortunately, her daughter Jennifer was unable to. After graduating Kings Park in 1962, she obtained her BA in studio art from Hunter College. Her interest in clay started in 1968 when she took classes in Riverside Church under Elspeth Woody, who was her mentor and became her good friend. From 1968 to the present, Madeline has continued to evolve and grow in her exploration of clay and has exhibited many shows in New York City, the DC area, and in Florida, and has been juried in many shows and in many national shows included. Throughout this period, she has maintained a home studio and co-founded 2 artist co-ops in New York City and Saratoga Springs, where she both showed her work and taught both adults and children. Rather than summarize all the honors she has received and the galleries that she has exhibited her work, I would like to share with you her philosophy with working with clay, which comes from her heart and soul. And I quote, "Much of my work has followed a path that deals with the effects of the other side of peace, the oppression that society has through war, ignorance, and religion, inflicted on all the living inhabitants of Mother Earth, and most violently on women and children. Clay is, for me, both magical and a language. It speaks to me. Working with it centers my entire being. It is a tangible, spiritual, creative connection that spans hundreds and millions of years. It is a material that has been used throughout the world to enhance and better one's life. It is a connection with the earth, with what makes all of us part of a common humanity. You cannot work with clay if you are not focused, and you have to learn to work in a partnership with it. Control it when you need to, but allow yourself to let the clay work with you, to speak to you. Play teaches you respect. Respect for patience, tolerance, the continuity of life. It teaches you the value of forgiveness and gives one the ability to learn from mistakes without judgment or condemnation. It enables one to express the creative core that is in every single one of us. It gives us the ability to be peaceful. The fact that I am a woman and a mother plays a very great role in my art. Almost all the work I have done over the last 40 years involves a female figure in some form or another. Much of my work is prompted by what goes on in our world, the individual, collective, and incomprehensible acts of inhumanity aimed too often towards women and children, often overwhelm me. Yet there are those acts of humanity that give us so much hope. All of those realities and stories play a part in how and why I work. Many of my pieces explore that way, both as individuals and as part of a common humanity, communicate how we cross the sometimes overwhelming abyss to understanding, wholeness, and acceptance. I believe art is a critically important language that cannot be separated from its social human context. It is what helps us scale that abyss. I hope my pieces speak to you. And now I'd like to introduce my sister Madeline.
Thank you, Marianne, and I am so honored to be here, and I am also very honored to know that, Leo, you haven't changed one bit in the last how many decades, which is really very reassuring. But I am very honored, and I was afforded a rather unique opportunity when I was accepted to be inducted here to look back on the last few decades, probably a little more than a few. And I was trying to figure out how I got from here, Lincoln's Park, to where I am now. And two things reached out to me. One was going through junior high and high school here. I have classmates here who have been so supportive and so helpful. And the school was small, our class was small. And we all knew one another. We never had a sense, I don't think, ever of failure. We always supported one another. We could try things, and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, but we all pulled together. And it was that feeling of confidence that we had, the feeling of support, and the feeling of love that I think I never really realized how important it was until many, many, many years later. So, the other thing was that in the last, I had ovarian cancer and it came back twice, and I'm fine. But the support and the humor that I have gotten from my classmates has just been incredible. There was no sympathy. I mean, why sympathy, right? Humor and love and support, and it's been wonderful. The second aspect of what I thought about was how important it is to find your core and to find a voice and follow it. And for me, the clay was my voice. And no matter what else I did, other things that I had to do in order to support ourselves as a family, I always worked in clay because it was my language. And I think all of us have that voice inside us, and we need to follow it. And we need to follow it wherever it takes us. And it's so important to be able to hold it and to allow it to grow, because it is who we are. And we too often let it go to the side because there are other things that get in the way. But what we need to do is keep that voice inside us, because we all have it. And that's what actually has been one of my most important aspects of my life, because it has kept me focused, and it's my home, because it's inside me, and it's something that is part of who I am. And I just want to thank you all so much for being here. family, friends, and all of you. Thank you.
Speaks for Willie. William Hines.
Be very afraid.
Wait, give it a microphone.
My name is Kara, and I am the daughter of Will Kleinings. Thank you so much for having us tonight, and thank you all for joining us here. If you don't know my dad, as he would say, that honestly sucks to be you. So you'll get to know him a little bit through what I'm about to say, as well as what he will say. We are from Palm Springs, California, and the reason we are here today is because of my father's role in our community. What he did in Palm Springs outshines anything that I could ever possibly do in my own life. And he has set such an extremely beautiful example for myself, my brother Joey, and our other brother Willie, and we hope to be just like him as we continue to grow up. I still think I'm growing up, so that's okay. It's a pretty built, okay. Some of the things my dad did involved both just our family and our group of friends, as well as the broad community. When he became mayor of Palm Springs, he had already set a tone for the community, and that was the reason that he was elected. Before he was in office, he was fighting to keep the parks open when the budget wouldn't allow it. He was working towards building parades for our community that would bring children, senior citizens, families together, something that he wanted to build as tradition. A few that he actually created from the ground up was the Festival of Lights Parade, which the first weekend in December, the community came together and every float and every person in the parade had to be decorated with lights. It was at night, and it was such a wonderful tradition that he started 20 plus years ago that still goes on today. He developed our homecoming parade, something that you guys had here in the community, and he created it for us where instead of just a couple of kids get to hang out in the back of a car, we have over 4,000 people coming out and participating in the parade alone with floats and the homecoming queen and every school band from elementary all the way to high school. Just a great, great time in the fall. One of his biggest honors for himself and for our community was he developed the Veterans Day Parade. My dad loves and admires and respects the vets of our community, of our nation, and of our country so much. And that parade today is one of the most recognized in our nation, and it still exists. He brought in B-52 stealth bombers to fly over the parade, Hellcats, Mustangs, B-25s, and every branch of the military was there. And as he was flying out yesterday on the plane, he actually received an email from a vet just saying, hey, Mayor Kleinings, I just want to say that that parade is still one of the biggest honors I've received when you asked me to come and participate in that parade. So what our Pops has done is pretty amazing in our community. On top of that, he really taught our family the value of tradition, and he brought in other people to be a part of that. My dad and mom started a Easter egg hunt when we were young kids in our backyard, and they put it on for 16 years every year, and over 200 people would come every year. Sometimes people we had never met that just found out about the Easter egg hunt, and he would collect probably close to 1,000 Easter bunnies and all those stuffed animals that we love as kids. And every kid would walk home with 5+ stuffed bunnies and just so excited that they were winning something and celebrating this holiday with their families. One thing that he started because he believed so much in being a mentor, both a mentor to his kids as well as to the community, is he actually began Big Brother, Big Sister in Palm Springs. And he developed this branch because there was issues of kids getting involved in gangs and other activities that are harmful. And he really believed that if he could create something that would allow them an outlet and to have a mentor, that he could save some of these kids from making wrong decisions. And that also is still taking place 20 years later. So for me, as his daughter, I live in New York City now. My brother lives in New York City, and we work together. And we miss our father every day, but he's also the guy that we call for everything in our lives, whether it's about what we should do in the business, or what do you think of this new restaurant, or hey, I want to get married, how do you feel about this person? He's our go-to guy, and he was that for all of us as we grew up. He's that for all of us right now, and still in the community, though he isn't the mayor. You can't walk around Palm Springs without someone every time coming up and giving him a hug and thanking him for what he did. And Dad, we thank you for what you did in Palm Springs, for what you did for our family, and just for being a leader in our lives that we can hold on to every single day. So, congratulations today.
Mr. Mayor.
Speaking of pictures, you hold that, but this is yours.
Thank you. Kara, thank you. My wife has her own business and was able to attend today. We were here not 3 weeks ago in New York City visiting with our family, and she just couldn't take the time, which is sad because I really wish she could have been here. But one of the stories, my wife's independent business has security alarms. It goes off, and we get notified when it goes off. So the alarm goes off, a phone call comes in, Kathy answers it, nudges me at 2 o'clock in the morning with an elbow and says, you get dressed and go down and see what's going on in my office. I'm not doing that. I go down there, I'm no longer married. I meet the police officer, Palm Springs Police. And we walk through the property, everything's fine, and we leave and we lock up. And he says, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, do you know who I am? And I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't recognize you. He says, well, let me tell you who you were to me in my life. I said, okay. He says, when I was a little boy, every year we waited to go to your house for the haunted house, because you put on the best haunted house. And we'd wait online, because there was line 50, 60 deep. And we'd only let one child at a time go in the house. You couldn't go with the strength of your friends, one at a time, and we tried to scare your pants off. And we did. He said, then I got invited to your Easter egg hunt. Oh my God, what a great memory. Oh, it was so fabulous. I couldn't believe it. But then I got to be a senior in high school, and you had been building the high school senior class homecoming float for years, and I was hoping you were still doing it when I was a senior, and you did. And we had the best float, and then you put us in the parade you did for us, and it was so cool. And you went to the game, and we saw you at the game, and it was great. And then you spoke at my graduation when I graduated. And I'm going, wow. And I don't know who this guy is. He says, but then I became a Palm Springs police officer, and you established as mayor the tradition where you insisted that anyone who wore a uniform, fire or police, that protected the citizens of Palm Springs is invited to come and take their oath in front of the citizens, because we were televised, and be introduced as this newest member of our force. And he says, you had been in my life since I was this big to when I was in the police force. And you have been an inspiration and a mentor for me my entire life. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I got my slippers on, and I'm weeping. I'm absolutely weeping. And it goes to the story that my daughter told. I have always believed that I had a role person, as a citizen, that I had to find ways and means by which I could improve the quality of life of others, not so much myself. And as challenging as that may be without any of the tools necessary to do so, I realized that when I tried as a private citizen to work with my electeds, not yet fellow electeds, but electeds, there was always a reluctance. There was a little bit of resistance. So I felt compelled to take office. And I took office, failed the first time, came in the second time, and served as mayor for 8 years. Now, within weeks of taking the post of mayor, I was on the golf course with the King of Malaysia, with 4 Secret Service U.S., 2 in 2 carts, and 2 from Malaysia. And the King and his professional golf guy came with him, and me and my buddy were playing golf with the King, and there was a distance between any of the players. And we got to one hole, and the King pars the hole, looks at me and says, "Mr. Mayor, I just parred." And he comes charging me across the green, and I turn to my buddy and go, do you high-five a king, or do they shoot you, or do they just stand there and let him come to you? And I'm honestly looking at the Secret Service, and they stop. 2 guys get out, and they're looking, what am I going to do? And safely say, high-five, no big deal. End of the story is, me and my buddy beat the King in his pro. I got $20 out of his pocket. The stories of being the mayor in Palm Springs were amazing. I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Henry Kissinger in LA when I was at a meeting in a private jet owned by Lord Hanson from England, who was allowed Ambassador Annenberg's wife and Ambassador White's wife to go shopping from Palm Springs. And while there, pick up Henry to bring him back for a speaking series. Friends of mine arranged for me to meet in the private jet, and I got 45 minutes with Dr. Henry Kissinger, with both women nagging him to come see him, and he said, "I don't want to see them, so keep talking to the mayor." And we spent 45 minutes talking to the mayor. I dined with Bob Hope, Frank Sinatra. I had regular dinners with Barry Manilow, Suzanne Summers. I have photographs of me with President Ford, the senior, and his wife, and President Bush and his wife, and my wife, when we did things together. Palm Springs afforded me great opportunities to be with the celebrities, but I tried to use all of that as leverage to allow the citizens of Palm Springs to improve. I did work closely, as my daughter said, on the Veterans Day Parade, because when I was a young child in this fine community, I recall with great specificity being a Cub Scout, dressing in uniform, meeting downtown, and standing in somewhat bewilderment as a young boy as to what a parade is and what am I supposed to do and where's the bathroom, because kids always want to know what the bathroom is. But from that, it instilled upon me the importance of celebrating what I have affectionately referred to as the Great American Vet, Simplified. And I then took it upon myself when I got to Palm Springs to attend the Veterans Day Parade, yet to my surprise and dismay, there was no parade. And I tried to get that to happen before I was in office, and once I became mayor, the request was no longer denied. Within less than a year, we had a Veterans Day Parade, and it has been in place every year ever since. I have been to numerous change of commands at 29 Palms up in the high desert. Outside of it, I've been to Fort Irwin. I have been on several ships, aircraft carriers. I've done tailhook landings. I made a relationship of importance between my community and the military. And again, I relate back to my upbringing here. My love of the homecoming parade was based on the homecoming parade we had here. Much of what I learned as a child here. And I will not leave without stating that the gentleman who is in charge of today's event is our good friend Leo Ostrow. And he may or may not remember an organization he put together when I was in high school. He called it AARO. AAO is what he called it. And he asked my classmates to join him in AAO. And AAO stood for anything, anytime, bar nothing. And we asked Leo, what do you mean? He says, I want you to volunteer when the community says I need your help. Will you join us? And we sheepishly said, sure, what does that mean? Well, there's photographs in our yearbook of us being right down this road here picking up trash on the street. There was a new church that got done, and we are grading their front yard, picking up the junk. Whatever it took, we said yes because our community demanded it. This man was one of my greatest inspirations as a young man. I referenced that in my acceptance letter, that as simple as that little AAO was to some, to me it was of great importance. I left this great town, the one I was raised in, and took with it the value of citizenry and of community. And I applaud all the work that he has done, and I'm sure helping all of you become better citizens. And I am honored to be a member of the Hall of Fame.